Okay, first step is the front blinkers. And we want to take those off in order to take the grill off. And I found out my screws are almost ready to fall out. Weird stuff on a truck. I've only got the 2 screws, and then it's held in by a clip back here. Taillights are the same way. So if you ever need to change the bulbs, that's all you're looking at, is to hook it there and then put just the 2 screws in here. Okay, now on the grill, show you what screws you need to pull off. You've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then in the bottom you've got 5, which is behind your blinker that you pulled out. You've got 6. Where are you at? That little guy right back there. Can kind of be a pain to get to, but he's right in the middle towards the top of the grill. And you've got this guy right down here. And then you've got just the other one in the behind the blinker there. I'm running out of hands. There we go. This down below, behind the blinker there. And now your grill should come right out. Now the cabling for the headlights need to be popped out of there, so you'll just want to pop off your plug from the back of the bulb, and then it's held in by this one little clip right there. Just pop that off and the cable will come out. Let's see if it'll be that easy. Yep, and the cable just comes right out of there. There's one more little clip, and that is right where that little fastener is there that you can't see back there, but you'll have to release that, and then your headlight cabling can come out. And on that one, I would just push that little thing through there and just pop it right out of the hole instead of trying to get back there and work the cable out. And then along with that same loom there, you've got one last wire coming in, and all that does is go up, come along your fender well there, and it goes right to the ground on the fender well there. So once you unhook that, then you should be able to pull the cable all the way out. And it's the same way on the other side here. This is your power steering cooler, and here's your headlight. So it'll have to be released back there the same way with the clips, and then pull it out. And then your horn just unplugs with your standard GM plug here, so it just pops right out of there. And that should be all the electrical that needs to be done on the front. One of the first things you should do, since we're going to be pulling this motor out and pulling all the electrical off anyway, is to go ahead and disconnect your batteries. It's one thing sometimes you can get away with things without it, but even though you got to reset your radio, and it seems like a pain in the ass, you blow one thing one time and you'll wish you had disconnected your batteries. So just go ahead and do it right at the beginning. I went ahead and pulled my battery out to give you a little better look here. So there's that clip for the headlight cable, and then here's the last, that's a ground wire that comes up in the same loom there, and it just clips right there. So you'll just have to, taking the battery out is not that big of a deal. So you'll have access to this little clip there, and that is the fender ground. It goes right into your fender. Okay, and once all that is loose, then you should be able to pull out this loom. Alright, there you go. Now that can just be poked down there and kept out of the way. But this side of the radiator support should be ready to come out. So on the passenger side, All you have are the blinker bulbs and the headlight itself and the ground. So not that big of a deal. But then you've got to pull the clips loose along the bottom of the radiator support here, there, goes around the back of the oil cooler, and then you'll actually be pulling it through here to get the whole wiring loom up out of the way. On this side, to unplug, you've already got the blinkers unplugged. All you've got to do is pull the headlight loose, and the whole wiring loom will pull up out of the hole down there of the radiator assembly. Okay, let's go ahead and pull the bumper off. I want to try to get that cable out from below the radiator support, and it's going behind the oil cooler there, so I want to have a little bit more access to be able to see what I'm doing under there. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 bolts, and there's some right directly below as well along the bottom of the bumper, and those were pretty tough. Some of them were. Most of them kind of came off pretty good, but as you can imagine, a bumper and it's out there pretty much in front of the road and grime of everything, so it got a little bit tough, but I was able to get them off with a standard 3/8 inch ratchet. And there we have the bumper removed. You can see my makeshift hole plug-in system there, duct tape. Previous owner had some holes drilled for some lights. I was having cooling issues at the time. I wanted to cover all my bases, so I covered those holes. And it stayed pretty well for years. But anyway, here's what you're looking at on those bumpers. You just got a top and bottom bolt all the way out here on the side. Just 2 more access through the hooks on this guy there. And same thing all the way along there, just the 4 bolts. And the bumper slid right off for me. Okay, so in order to clear that cable out of the way, we need to pull the oil cooler off, which we need to do anyway. The oil cooler is holding the cabling back behind, as you can see. So this plastic piece will come off, and there's just bolts. I think there's 4 bolts, 2, 3, 4, yeah. And this plastic air, this is part of your cooling system, by the way, so you should keep it on if you have it, and get one if you don't. And as you can see, mine's been cut up, but it's not too bad there. But anyway, so this plastic will come off, and that will give access to a mounting bolt, I believe here, below here. And then the oil cooler will come off, and then we'll be able to finish pulling this cabling system out of the way here. And as you can see, pulling that plastic valance off there is going to be a little bit difficult with all this, the oil cooler lines in the way. By the way, this is Leroy Diesel's oil cooler line set that I put on several years ago, and has been flawless ever since. Hopefully a lifetime part there, I suspect. So anyway, we'll go ahead and pull this oil cooler off, and in order to do that, we can pull off the cooler itself off of the bottom piece, pull that down out of the way, and that'll give us access to pull that plastic out of the way there. Okay, there we go. Now we'll just access the 4 bolts into here, and that plastic piece will come right off, and then we can get to the mounting bolt that is below here. So here's that front air dam ready to be taken off. It's just got, I believe, 10 millimeter maybe? Not sure, but anyway, just 4 bolts, 2 of them on either side of it there, and then that will drop right down. Okay, and there we go. And like I said, that last clip was right behind that oil cooler bracket, which is frustrating. But the everything in here is on the oil cooler, and this air dam and everything is 10 millimeter bolts. So just getting access from that underneath that air dam, and you can pull those off, and the bottom bracket for the oil cooler comes right off. And again, putting all the nuts, bolts, screws, everything back in place will really help you keep track of everything. So now we'll pull these clips apart like so. Let's see here. Yep, get the right tools. And my tripod broke, so hopefully I'll have one here back here, and I'll be able to get more coverage and a little stabler shots. But until then, I got to do handheld. A little ridiculous, but that's the best I got for now. Things break. Okay, so now we'll be able to just pull this up through there and get it right up through the access hole there, and then we'll move on to the power steering cooler. So I'm seeing how all of those things are not going to go through that little hole, of course. So what I'm going to try to do is go ahead and just pull the radiator support, get it loose, and just swing it out of the way, because that's really all I'm doing, is trying to get access for the motor to be able to come out of there. So it doesn't really need to be completely disconnected. So if we can release everything and just push it and have it hanging down over here on the driver's side, then that'll be fine as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the radiator shroud off next, and pull the radiator, and then we'll pretty much just be, I think we'll be ready to try to get that radiator support loose. So we go about pulling off the 10mm bolts on the shroud, which is the ones on the front here, and then you've got the two on either side, two down there, and then two down on the other side over here. So we'll pull those loose, and then we'll go ahead and pull the radiator brackets loose, and then pull the radiator out. So, having never pulled my battery tray out, I was a little bit concerned because I had to get to those bolts to pull it off. But what they did was they just give you access here from the back, or the front, I should say. So you're able to reach those last two, and then the others are accessed. Let's see. So the ones on the down part of it, they're accessed from the inner fender, and then that last one that was a little bit tough, and then should come right out. So now I'll have an opportunity to clean this thing up and put a little rust proof on it. And OSFO is what I use. Is used in the airplane industry. Well, we used it on building airplanes growing up in Alaska and whatnot, and the rust pretty much is a way of life up there. But that OSFO works really, really well. So I'll coat this with it, and maybe a coat of paint. I'm not sure. It depends on how much time I have. I usually run out of time by the time I get ready to make things pretty. But at least get that OSFO on there, and it'll get a coating, an anti-rust coating on there, and it'll make it last pretty much forever. Okay, so the front radiator core support, what you need to pull off is in the inner fender. There are 3 bolts down there towards the bottom. You can see you'd pull those out from the inner fender. Go ahead and pull the fender off while you're at it. And then you've got one right below the headlight bucket there. One right up top with the fender. You've got one right below here, and then the rubber body mount basically here. And as you can see, that is going to be pretty difficult. It's out there in the weather and everything. I just put some Grille on there. Pretty good, big advocate of this Grille. It's kind of spendy, but man, there is nothing better. I'm telling you what. A lot of opinions on that, but I've used just about everything from WD-40 to PB Blaster. I really like as well, and that was my go-to. But then I remembered Grille from back in the day, again, of helping my dad working on airplanes in Alaska and whatnot, and that Grille just can't be beat. So you use an 18mm wrench to get the bolt off, but the bolt will spin. So this has got a 8mm hex on it that you hold as you're spinning the bolt. And she was stiff, but came right off. And then that should be all we need to pull the core support out. So now all we got to do is repeat it on this side, and she should be ready to come out. So you want to pull the hood release cable off. So I pulled it loose just to show you guys how it all fits in there, so you can reach over and grab it. this just fits down in there. I took a screwdriver and just whacked it and it popped right off. And on the back here, you'll see that I can get you straightened out there. The cable itself just slides into that little clip right there. So if I can get this, I don't think I can do this one-handed here. I'll hold the camera. But, geez. So push that with a screwdriver, open it up, and then the cable will slide right out of there. I can't do it with both hands, but anyway, as you look down in the back there, that's what you're looking at. Just pop this part off and then slide that out, and the cable will come right off of there. Okay, so we got the core support loose. I just wanted to go down briefly the steps here. Pulling your batteries will allow you to pull your battery trays out, and that's from the inner fenders and the 3 bottom bolts there, and then the upper bolts here, and then 1 nut is right up there. And then on the side of the core support here, you have the top, middle, and bottom. And then below, you've got the rubber support here. This is an 18 millimeter nut, but you got to hold it with an 8 millimeter to keep the bolt from spinning. And then you've got 2 accessible, this is for the battery tray, but 2 accessible from there for the battery tray. And that should be it on the core support. Now this is where it gets ugly. I'm not too proud of this, but I could totally be missing something and just knock myself in the forehead. But I didn't want to break into my power steering system and have to bleed it later or have the fluid go all. I just didn't want to mess with it. And for the life of me, I couldn't see where you could pull it through. And I don't know why. All I had to do was make a bigger hole. And so I just took a grinder. I'm gonna clean this up. I'm gonna round this and make it look a little bit more matching to the radius of the stock hole. But I just cut a little piece out here, and I was able to slide my power steering cooler and the bulb sockets were able to come right out of there. And so that was a lot easier than having to break into the power steering system, which is what it looked to me like you had to do. So and then on this, oh, also too, you've got also the ground wire here to pull loose from the loom. Of course, your headlight plugs come off. And same over here, you've actually got a ground that hooks onto the back of the core support. And that'll have to pull loose. That'll be pretty obvious. But so we've got the core support all pulled loose. We've got the oil cooler had to come off, and the bottom plastic valance had to come off in order to access the one little screw. I don't know, it's underneath here, in order to get that bottom oil cooler bracket off in order to access the rest of the cabling. Opening up that hole allowed you to pull the cabling and your power steering cooler out. Pulling this cable off, we'll pull this out, and then of course releasing all the bolts on this side of the core support and your bottom brackets. I don't think that I mentioned pulling the bumper loose. Of course, it's only a top and bottom bolt, and then that just slides right off. But then also you've got these 2 bumper supports out here that come off as well. And I only pulled one off, but if you go ahead and pull them both off, it'll be a lot easier, because you've got to pull the core support up and over this whole thing to get it out. So if it's off, then it's a lot easier. And that's about it. And then now we're ready to pull the core support up, off, and out of the way. One little thing I did is just a minor thing, but I pulled the fan loose in order to drop it back, because that bottom fan shroud was still there and it kept interfering with the bottom of the fan. I was trying to lift the core support up. So I just pulled the fan completely loose and knocked it back, and that allowed me to pull that core support up with the rest of the, or I'm sorry, that allowed me to pull the fan shroud back and then pull the rest of the core support up. Okay, and there we are. Core support is out. I went ahead and pulled that inner fender out. And I'm not going to go through all the peripheral things to pull off. Every now and then I will, but things like the starter and the water pump system, Actually, all that's going to stay there anyway. I'm going to try to pull as little apart in this head change article that I can. But anyway, as far as the peripherals and all that other stuff, I'm not going to cover it because every truck's going to be different. I don't have AC on this vehicle and other things. So if there are certain things that I need to cover, I think might be helpful, then I'll go ahead and do it. But other than that, I'm just going to start pulling things apart. I've already got the lower radiator hose and all the radiator fittings off, air cleaner, of course. And I'm just going to start going from there and start tearing it all the way down. I like to pull everything off that I can while the motor's in the truck, and then the last, get it stripped down as far as I can to pull the motor. And so there we are. We'll move on from here and start tearing it apart.